I'm getting rid of everything here. This weekend I decided to organize my closet so I could trade all this stuff in for some cash, a stack of dual lands, and probably a bunch of other cool reserve list staples. With the amount I've been buying lately, periodically you just have to clear out inventory. Whether it's collector boxes, $10 stacks of cards, doesn't matter. There are ultimately only very specific types of cards I really like holding on to. Reserve list staples tend to make up a big part of it. And of course power, all I have is my Lotus is the other part of that. But when you're looking to consolidate, there's a major difference between the different types of cards, right? A Black Lotus is very different than a $2 foil common. It's very different than a $15 fetch land. It's very different than a sealed box of collector packs. I mean, they all kind of have different utilities. So here's how I like to move my stuff. If it's under $10, it's probably going to a buy list. Cards that are $5-6 that are right on the edge, you can definitely get some value for, but oftentimes a buy list will give you $4 or $5 in store credit for that $7 card. And ultimately, the store credit bonus gets you to the dual lands, the Mox Diamonds, the power, the cards you want to hold on to. But remember, buy listing is incredibly time consuming. You have to go card by card, which is why if I make an offer on a collection, I'm usually offering a pretty low margin if the cards are worth less than $10. Someone has to spend their time doing it. It can be lucrative, but that's why I always tell people if they want to sell a bunch of stuff under $10, they're better off buy listing it themselves than selling it to me or any other vendor. Hyper-specific cards like non-playable vintage or just like old school foils, those will never do well on a buy list because they're always going to be graded down in condition and you will lose a lot of the buy price. So you want to find a private buyer for those cards if you can. They tend to be the hardest to move. These days I'm always buying collections, but those old foils, those arbitrarily expensive like beta uncommon, they're just going to be harder to move, so I pay less on them than I would pay for say like a dual land or a premium fetch land or something like that. Cards that are worth like $15 plus tend to be the best to move to other vendors. That's like where you usually get your most money. When I buy a collection or I open like a whole bunch of product, this tends to be the stuff I end up with the most of. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Bulk and cheap cards I end up with more of, but this is like of real high value cards, the stuff that I have the most of. And finally, though I'm cautious, I do sometimes move reserve list staples. I just need to get good value because I have to pay the most for these things. They're definitely the cards I prioritize when I buy collections the most. I will sell them. They just have to be sold at a full good price, right? I have to be able to get full market for them. If I sell to a private buyer, a vendor, a streamer, I'm often taking some percentage of 100% value. Maybe it's 70% up to 95% depending on what I'm selling. But ultimately the goal is to not really be too heavily invested in Magic at any one time unless I'm consolidated in high-end power reserve list cards, the type that don't really go down. Otherwise, I don't like to be too heavily invested or have too heavy a position at any time, which is why periodically after buying enough collections, I will just move through a big chunk of stuff. This weekend was a project and I'm excited to get some of this stuff out of here.